didn't know that was the introduction, but here we are. Oh my God, there's booze under here. So awesome.
I'll have a coffee cup of booze, please.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. We're waiting for the rest of the hordes to show up. In fact, here comes one. Thank you for giving us technically your lunch hour. That's totally my eyes. That's what I get for being short. Our panel, Cultivating Worlds, Exploring Social VR Gaming Experiences. There is so much happening in this arena. So we'll talk about the intricacies of immersive multiplayer interactions and community building in VR specifically. I'm Perrin Kaplan. I'm the co-founder of Zebra Partners. We're a female-owned company, global communications and integrated PR marketing firm. We work in gaming, really deeply in VR, XR, my friend Caroustel's favorite, AR, and a variety of other emerging tech areas, entertainment. So welcome to the panel. Thanks again for being here. I've got just an amazing panel of experts. It's so cool to be able to wrangle such top talent all together versus individually. So welcome, guys. I'm going to introduce in the incorrect order because they're sitting where they're sitting. Shane Rhodes.
Hello, I'm Shane Rhodes from Mighty Coconut. I'm a 3D modeler and gameplay designer.
I'm going to expand on that.
Yeah.
He is the 3D modeler and gameplay designer for the amazing, fun, and top-selling VR game Walkabout Mini Golf.
Oh,
and
yes.
I don't know if anyone has played it, but it's so fabulous. And before joining Mighty Coconut, he was a 3D artist and creative writer for various different studios in LA. Then he pivoted to 3D art, which is probably your true passion, and has worked with studios like Netflix, WB, FX, Paramount, Nickelodeon, and Live Nation.
That's correct, yeah.
I will say that your company was quoted as saying how lucky and happy you are to be here in this time now in this industry, seeing how the communities are loving your product. CNET Scott Stein, who we love, calls it magical origami.
Yeah, it's super special for me. This is actually my first foray into video games traditionally. So like to being something that's kind of hit it out of the park like this is just unreal. Like
that is unreal for your first.
The gratitude is not lost on me, I'll tell you.
We're happy to have you. Jonathan Hamel, to my left, studio design director at another Axiom. There was a panel of the Gorilla Tag leaders who are in the audience here yesterday. It was really stunning to hear all the great insights. Before another Axiom, Jonathan was at Ready at Dawn, which is so cool. He was working on award-winning VR games like Lone Echo 2, and Echo VR. He also came from the game console world, Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider, and the BAFTA award-winning indie game that I love, What Remains of Edith Finch. So cool.
Thank you.
Early today, it was announced that Gorilla Tag has passed the 100 million in revenue mark, which is huge in VR, making it the most successful game in VR and holding its #1 position as we speak. And Morgan Tucker in the middle. Humble Morgan, he is the head of creator at Rec Room, Rec Room's so cool. He empowers creators to make interactive experiences and develop communities to build their own long-term success. You're the kind of person who really foresees lifting up the next generation. I think it's just so wonderful because everybody has a great story to tell. Morgan also, prior to this, led music and brands and education for Roblox. And any of you that were paying attention or involved at that time, was one of the earlier people pushing out the spatial voice chat, and then the immersive virtual concerts with 21 Pilots and Lil Nas X and the Gucci Garden virtual exhibition. And it just was announced that Rec Room's new raise has put it at a $1.25 billion valuation because VCs are pushing to find another Roblox. It may be right in this room. So we're going to watch our time really carefully. I want to sort of split this into two sections, and hopefully it will encompass all the things that you may have rolling around in your minds. The first is really like how each of them have built the communities and what they're particularly proud of, and then switching to the communities themselves. What are the dreams and hopes? What's working? what's not working, what are some of the great tips and lessons that you can share. And it will just kind of rotate around, or I'll call on you. But let's just say, Morgan, give me a few of the highlights of the success that your company has had, and what are you particularly most proud of?
So Rec Room is really interesting in that it started off as a game, a pure game, but very much socially oriented. And slowly but surely, we noticed that a lot of people actually weren't playing the games, the mini games that we created, but rather were making up their own games or really just sitting on the game field and talking to each other. So we started listening to the types of tools that they wish they had. This started off with things like magic markers to be able to draw on whiteboards and things like that. And it evolved slowly into giving players more and more ability to create themselves. And so the platform has shifted from being a game with some UGC elements to really becoming a UGC platform with a lot of games and more baked into it. And that's been a really incredible journey over the last 8 years.
That's awesome. Shane, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar along those lines as, we started off as a mini golf game, but the kind of hangout ability, if you will, of those worlds has been something that I don't know if was entirely expected to kind of go the way that it was. Like we always hear people talking about they're doing meetings inside of Walkabout while playing. They're reconnecting with family members that they hadn't before. Even those that don't get into video games traditionally, mini golf is such a great entryway to do that. And then once you're in there, you kind of, even though we have a very low poly aesthetic, that kind of melds away, and it's almost like you're
poly,
closer.
it's origami.
Yeah,
Beautiful
exactly. Origami style. But yeah, even my parents alone, who we didn't have video games in my household growing up until they bought a conversion van that happened to have a Super Nintendo in it. Whoops for them. And throughout my entire life, I've been a big gamer growing up, and something they never understood. I had, through virtue of doing this job, I had a headset that now I upgraded, so I have one to give, so I give it to my parents. She goes in, she's like, I'll play for about 30 minutes or so. About 5 hours later, she comes out going, why is the sun no longer up? So now they own headsets each, and we all play together. And something like that is I think what I'm most proud of about that product is that, like, someone that completely had no interest in anything really digital, video game, virtual environments, any of that, is now finding this way that it really enriches their life and to connect with me and with other family members and stuff like that. So
What also is awesome is that they know what their kid does for a living. Most of parents are pretty confused.
Yes,
like,
you
and
don't
then
know
you
how many
explain, they're
times
like, I still don't get
my dad has been like, oh, you'd be really great at this job. Has nothing to do with what I was trying to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, man.
Jonathan.
I'll try to keep this brief because I think the audience will be excited to hear that my answer kind of underlines some of the things that you two talked about, which is that, sometimes we think of what we do as creating that third place that's disappeared from modern life. Mm-hmm. So, we're creating a place for people to be, and there just happens to be gameplay there. And then, similar to you, over at Rec Room, we find the most success when we observe and notice what players are getting out of it, and then we follow that. So often, the more rules we put in place in this third place, the less they like it. In the same way that, like, if you go down to the pub and there's a bunch of darts sitting there, you decide which darts game to play. It's not like the dartboard enforces a particular version of darts.
Interesting analogy.
So, like, you bring your fun to the place that we've built.
So I have a simple but super complex question. Can you build significant real connections in VR?
Yes, 100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Okay, so let's see, Morgan.
Yeah, so I've been working in virtual spaces for over a decade now, going as far back as IMVU, which was came out around the same time as Second Life, and has had expanded into virtual spaces over time as well. The emotions that you feel, the connections that you make are all very real, and they extend far beyond the screen that you're interacting with into the real world. Met many people from Rec Room, Roblox, and IMVU who have made lifelong friends, have learned how to run their own businesses, have fell in love and got married. So absolutely, these are very, very real. And I think sometimes taking kind of the social awkwardness that comes along with meeting a stranger in the real world and being able to rely upon having this digital visage.
It's the equalizer.
Yeah, it really normalizes the experience. It makes things feel a little bit safer, more approachable, and people oftentimes can be more themselves maybe than they are in the real world, which I think is a great way to break the ice and to move forward with someone else.
Shane, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, along those lines as well, we just had a couple that sent a story in that they had met. I'm going to butcher some of the details because I won't remember, but one was overseas and one was here in the States, and they had met on Walkabout Mini Golf. They'd formed a relationship. They came and met each other, and now they're going to get married, and we've actually been talking to them to try to figure out how they can get married in headset.
It's
They want to get
happened.
married
It's
in
happened
Walkabout.
before. Yes.
Yeah, so
it's
that's
awesome.
Yeah, 100%. That's like I'm seeing it actively every day as we work. We have a whole thing in our Slack of just all the stories that come out of our fans and the ways that they've met and reconnected. It's pretty unreal. It's more so than I ever even knew before getting into this. So yeah.
Jonathan, another in Gorilla Tag is such a passionate community.
Yeah.
Tell us what you see psychologically happening in terms of relationships and.
Well, our community is in the game, but it's also in all the other places that people are online. It's it's on our Discord. It's in the community, the creator communities that we have, people who are making YouTube videos and following those people. I think what differentiates the kind of connections that you can have in virtual reality is the increased expressiveness you have through like the human methods of, it's funny because you're a gorilla, but the sort of human methods, like the gestures, the posture, et cetera. And that like, oh boy, this is turning long. Bear with me, but like, because
I know where the hatchet is.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Get the hatchet ready.
It's good.
Because what your stories are reminding me of is that like I'm the age of Matthew Broderick in the movie War Games, so I was like on the dial-up modem on the phosphor green thing pre-internet, and like I had a D&D group that met online and we had connections, and then when I played a minstrel in Dark Age of Camelot in the era of MMOs around the turn of the century, like. People were getting married, and they asked me as a minstrel to play at their wedding in Camelot. But what's different about VR is people are so much more expressive. When the Dave Newbelt here in the audience and I both worked on, and others too, Natalie and Rachel worked on Echo VR. And when Echo VR, on the last day when the Echo VR servers were shut down, I was hanging out in the lobby because I wanted to be there with just other members of the community, and there was like a random stranger with his arms around me, and we were like hugging, being like, oh no, the servers, and then he just disappeared. Oh. Those are real connections. But
disconnections, as it turns out.
And disconnections. Yeah. But as we get more and more expressive, we're able to have posture and voice and gesture, and eventually, hopefully, more and more eye tracking on more accessible headsets. Like we'll have more channels for being human in VR.
So how do anyone can grab this, and then we'll give fair time. How do you build a community? And probably the path is similar but unique to each of your companies.
I'm kind of interested in what you have to say, because you were there before we launched Echo VR.
Yeah, I think.
These are not hard rules, but what do you feel?
Sorry to put you on the spot.
There are some fundamentals that need to be in place for a community to come together more easily. I think one of the things, again, that is common through each of our games is more of an open social kind of stance. So, mics on, it's easy to connect with people, it's easy to express and emote. that really like gets the juices flowing. People feel more connected to one another. To your point, the more that you can sense that there's a real human on the other end of the line, the more empathy that you're able to exhibit. And that's really the foundation of a relationship, which can grow into multiple relationships, which can grow into a community. So I think that's one of the things. The other part of this is, and I'm interested to hear how you both approach this, but being very clear about the expectations you have for the players, for the broader community. Rec Room does a really great job with its onboarding and bulletin boards that are posted everywhere around what we expect out of the community, that you should be kind to
Give
one
an
another.
example.
Yeah, be kind to one another, help each other, et cetera. And it kind of sets a baseline. So when somebody is not acting that way, the broader community really kind of helps to correct them. And so I think it's a good way to establish what you want to see. But yeah, those are kind of the beginnings of a community. And then from there, giving people the ability, again, to collaborate with one another, to build out further so that they're not confined by the constraints of whatever game design or technology that you've got in your game. Let them build out. Let them build their own communities. I think that's key.
Jonathan, in Gorilla Tag, you have a massive number of daily active users. How was that built?
Slowly over time.
Yes. It's not been that long. What, 2021? End of 2021?
Yeah, I was not there, but what Carousel said at Meta at the last Meta Connect, launching on App Lab was critical to that. Being public and transparent about what you're doing, because people are interested in how we do what we do. And so the more transparent you can be as a company about your goals and what you're trying to do, the more you start to attract people who want to help you make that. And then they're emotionally invested in what you're doing. And then you start working with them and listening to them, and you have a great community. We also have creator programs where people who are invested in the game are supported in creating content around the game and sharing their love of what they do. And then I think another part of it that was a big learning for those of us who worked on Echo VR is we could do better on our onboarding, I think. There was a lot of iteration on the onboarding of Echo VR. It works really well in Gorilla Tag to just drop people in. And then because our movement model is so unusual, or was so unusual, people aren't really sure how to move around. And that experience of flailing around and then figuring it out and then realizing that...
Kind of exciting.
Yeah, well, it is, you go from sort of this little bit of frustration to oh, I've got it. So I sometimes say when I'm talking to new designers who are onboarding, that it's sort of like the Dark Souls of social, in that you have that same arc of struggle, struggle, struggle. Oh, and your reward is to get to the top of that starter cave and see other monkey down there that are real people.
It's actually life, by
Yeah.
the way, what you just described.
Yeah, and another thing, and the wonderful trailer that Scout House made for us, talks about a new monkey thrashing about, and that really is the player experience. I think that we saw something very similar in the early days of Echo, before any tutorialization or onboarding existed. There was nothing, and the positive effect of that was that other players would come up to you. The hamburger helpers would come up and say, you must be new because you're bouncing off the ceiling on the walls. Let me help you.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of our secret.
Sorry,
Yeah,
to jump
Shane,
on
what
that.
about you? And I'm also interested that how people were interested in becoming part of your community if they weren't you don't have to love golf, right?
Right. Yeah. It's all walks of life on that. I think to echo a little bit of what's been said here, a a big part of it is that everyone on the team loves the game. We love to play it. We love to make it better. We love to keep it going. And part of that is that community. So like we have on a Discord, for example, with a lot of friends, and so we play a lot with our moderators, and it's like kind of that pay it forward thing, so like being kind and all these things, like kind of creating that environment of how we like to play, kind of gets pushed on to the moderators, and then they kind of like spread that love out, going forward too. And we have things in place too, like when you set up a lobby, you create your own rooms and things. So a lot of times that Discord is a nice, safe place where people can kind of get together and they kind of know what they're getting into, and they can have kind of like-minded people. But to speak to, I might have gone off topic of what the original thing was, but I wanted to speak to what you're talking about onboarding, because that is such a fun thing. I discovered it in yours when I'm like, oh, I don't have to do this. I can do this. That's fun. And get faster. We have a lot of that same methodology as well of like, you can fly around in the worlds, but no one tells you how to do that. It's something you can discover or you can jump into a game and do. And I think, all of what we've been talking about so far, I think is what creates that environment. It's that room to explore. It's that room to talk to somebody and figure out more about this place that just kind of keeps building. I don't know if that answered that question.
Sure.
I think I'm on a little tangent.
No, this is your knowledge that you're sharing.
Yeah.
So
I think that's part of that success is really, kind of individuality, I think, is what it really empowers.
do you think, this is kind of an odd question, but growing up in the early console era myself and mobile, back to the Game Boy, a lot of those things are just one directional, right? Or maybe multiplayer, but you don't necessarily completely know who they are until more advancements came. If you didn't have the community element, what would happen to each of your games? And I guess that's not as relevant for Morgan, but you might have a perspective on it. Is the success because of the community?
100%. Yeah, that is one of the reasons why we care so much about the community. There was a point, I don't know if this is still true, but there was a point in time a couple years ago when the average number of friends of an Oculus user was 1.
Yes, yes.
So you can't...
And the other friends are very annoyed because you didn't pick them.
Yeah. So you couldn't rely on the social graph of like Facebook or of the other headset users. And so we had to build our own communities. So a lot, I think one of the things that we do really well in VR, these games, our games, is building new communities out of the people who have the headsets. I don't think we're quite, your story notwithstanding, I don't think we're quite as good at bringing existing communities into VR. For many reasons, right? Like if a parent wants to play Gorilla Tag with their 2 kids, they need to have 3 headsets.
Yeah.
And that's not as easy as pulling out 3 phones.
Yep. Yeah. I was going to go into sort of some of those particular challenges. So there's so much positive in all these communities. What do you do when people are telling you what they want, what more they want to see? How do you decipher? And I know, just speaking for your company, you all are building games that you want to play, which is just a really cool approach. But when people are telling you what they want, how do you decipher which has value, which doesn't? Do people feel ignored if you don't respond right? Can you talk about that? Because we're in a generation where the participants have high expectations. You go to a movie and you're going to have an opinion. You go to a restaurant, you're going to have an opinion. I think back in the old days, you just went to a movie and you just went to a restaurant. So how do you handle that?
For us, I know, luckily a lot of the times it just kind of aligns with what we want to see as well in the world of Walkabout. And then other times there are things that we would like to see, but maybe either it's something that has been done before, maybe it's not so unique. So we try to take some ideas and like what's a cool spin we could do on it. More on that later as DLC comes out. But yeah, I think it's just that kind of ongoing back and forth between what we would see as something that that people want, that we want, and then if it makes sense for us to be able to do it in a timely manner and make it of good quality is really that end goal.
Yeah, I think with Rec Room, it's interesting. It's fairly complex because there are two strata of audiences that a lot of times actually intersect and are the same thing that we have to pay a lot of attention to, which are players and creators. And most of our creators are also players, and probably all of them were players at some point. So we have really worked to tear down kind of the barrier between that two-way communication, be as transparent as we can be about what we're doing and why, and give folks the opportunity via Discord, via in-game sort of Q&A, things like that, to really participate in the feature development, suggestions, bug fixes, et cetera. And the creator organization, which I'm responsible for, we work directly with creators. If they're having problems with the experience they're trying to build, we'll get in and help them accomplish that. And by doing that, we can see like, oh wow, they're encountering a lot of friction in this workflow that we hadn't imagined, and that gives us ideas on how to improve that. On the player side of things, our players are very, very vocal. And a lot of times,
players.
a lot of times you have to sift through some of the sentiment to get to the truth, but there's usually truth even under the really kind of negative pieces that we listen to and we take and we try to act on. The platform truly would be nothing without its creators at this point. And so it's our job to listen to them and make sure that their voice resonates through the product.
And for Gorilla Tag, you're getting opinions from
everywhere.
younger people and
and
parents.
older people. I think we have even more channels than that. And I try to pay attention to them all. Right? There's the finger painters, for those of you who know the game, the people who are in the creator program who are making content on YouTube and TikTok. They produce videos. There's a Discord bot that alerts a particular channel that I subscribe to every time a finger painter video is posted. I'll always try to click through and watch it or watch some of it to sort of see what they're saying. That audience is different than the players as a whole. To understand what the players as a whole wants, there's metrics, and then there's just watching and reading the Discord chat, which I do. I read a lot more than I post. And then there's our own desires and plans that factor into that. Let's see. Oh, and then we also have in Discord, it overlaps a little bit with the finger painters, but we have a group that we call Alpha Squad, which we give early builds to get their feedback. We try to get it out as soon as possible, so that because they're all very good players. I still can't wall run. They can. So, if we're doing something new, they'll find the problems, the exploits in it, which are sometimes okay. For me, like I love that in between space between what the community tells us through their play habits and what the finger painters want. The reason I'm going into that is there's an example. There's a particular content creator who had a particular love for a map that really wasn't played much. And I was really excited about updating that map and seeing
how to make it better, more attractive.
Yeah. And I knew that particular content creator would be like excited and would sort of spread that
That's
excitement.
so powerful for them, really.
Yeah. I love. There's another creator, There's another creator who, every time they post a video, they like run to the city and they're like, is there a new balloon? Is there a new balloon? Oh, there's not a new balloon. And then they play like a wah sound. And so when we're planning cosmetics, I'm like, we should do a new balloon because I'm excited.
Yeah, that's what it's about. So that's the perfect side of all of it. What is imperfect? Because it's still in its infancy, really. This whole concept, what are the things that you wish could happen or that you see in the future could happen? I mean, we've had conversations about communities being able to navigate easily with the people that they love playing with, or not having to, join a new server every time and you're on 80 different servers and have to invite your friends. What are some of the things that you can't do yet that you wish for the industry? Not everybody has to have an answer.
I'll jump in while you're thinking. I feel like I'm
Go for
talking
it.
too
No,
much.
you're
but,
great. You're great. Good stories.
One of the things that Rec Room inspired us when we were at Ready at Dawn, and this wasn't me, this was more Dave and Dana at Ready at Dawn, but like an early vision for Echo VR was for it to be like when you go to the park in your neighborhood with a Frisbee. And that approach showed in the data of how people were spending their time online. People would be spending 60 minutes in the lobby and maybe only playing, or maybe not even playing any matches at all. And we are seeking in the direction of that experience where there's a place that you feel is yours, where you haven't had to do the let's be friends, Demon Slayer 3349, who's wearing this hat today, and there's somebody with a demon in their name with a different hat. Are they the same person? It's very hard to recognize people again when they change their cosmetics. But if you go to the same park together and you see the way they stand and the way they talk, eventually you're going to recognize this person and be like, hey, you're fun to play with. Let's be friends. And we're really interested in innovating in that direction, like how to create these places that people feel that they can encounter people that they met before and maybe become friends over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I just agree. I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think as was mentioned earlier, one of the biggest hurdles is how the access to these worlds at this point too. Yeah, can be an expensive point of entry to get into this park. So that's exciting as the tech gets more and more accepted, and there's more iterations of these coming out, and the cost of hardware and stuff is coming down. Then the only thing that I know that's holding us back that I want more of is just more triangles, more count to make all the things we want to put into the game. And we've increased our team. When I jumped on, it was 10 people at Mighty Coconut, and I think we're up to about 34 now. And everyone we brought on has just these amazing ideas and also skills for whether it's effects to add to the game, lighting, all this other stuff. And so more than ever, we're hitting that ceiling, right? It was a huge boost to us when we eventually, sadly, had to leave the Quest 1 behind and focus as Quest 2 being the new standard for what we went for. So I know whenever, and it'll be a long time from now, but whenever that 3 is, I know, we're gonna get so many more cool expressions of everyone's skills and art into those worlds and breathe new life into it. Yeah.
You can have our triangles. I want eye tracking.
That's fair.
Yeah. I think, so there are 2 kind of ideals that we are trying to live up to the promise of in the fullness of time at Rec Room, which are everyone can play and everyone can create. And this discussion is focused primarily in VR, and VR is at the heart of Rec Room. I think it actually is, it is the exemplar of kind of expression and immersion. And so when you're on a phone, a lot of that is removed. And so, you ask, what do we wish were true? That you were able to be as expressive with a lower end device, with the device that's in front of you. Whether that's playing, communicating socially, expressing yourself, or creating. And that requires a lot of technology, it requires a lot of design. So yeah, we're actively working on trying to remove those barriers, but the more we can get more people interacting with each other, collaborating with each other, the better this gets. And eventually everybody will have a headset, and that'll be awesome, but in the meantime, we want to get people contributing actively to these spaces, to these worlds, and building their visions regardless of what they have access to.
So you have a conference like this, which is VR, and then all the other components of XR. There's still so many people that are like, well, VR is not quite there yet. It's not, it's still in the future when really it's now. There's 6,000, I think, attendees at this conference, which I think is phenomenal. 565 speakers or such. What is your opinion on that old mantra? And how do we get people to understand that we are here now and it's a big something?
Mine will be pretty quick. I think it's just along the same lines of, every generation's like, this is the worst generation. When I was a kid, it was better. I think that's the VR thing, because every time we're like, VR is dead, it gets better, and it gets better. Right. And I think now we have even more people involved in VR, whether it's from the side of developing for it or playing in it. It's better than it's ever been, and it's only going to get better. So, like, as much as people keep saying it's dead, it's still building up. It's a slow evolution, but I think, to me, it seems like we're really starting to turn a new leaf on that, and hopefully that mantra will be muted a bit more as we go on.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys think?
I think one of the interesting things.
And does it make you mad, by the way?
No, look, I love VR, and I think I sort of evangelize it to everybody that I can, anybody that comes to my house. I'm like, you gotta try this new game, gotta try this new device. I think that's definitely where everything is going. But yeah, I think it's okay that it's where it is right now. You've got the people who really believe in it, who really want to see it succeed, putting their all into it, and that's awesome. I lost my train of thought, so you can come back to me. You go for it.
Yeah, that was part of our motivation as a company in sharing some of the data yesterday is that, yes, VR is still on a growth curve. So is console gaming, so is PC gaming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't talk about them being not there yet because they're in the middle of their growth curve. We're on a growth curve, but like we have 1 million daily active users. We hit 100,000 concurrent users at one point before, as Dave mentioned, our servers, I think, caught on fire.
Yeah.
100,000 reviews on the Meta Quest store.
These are huge numbers.
Yeah, the number of headsets that are the addressable market for you to make a consumer product for VR is greater than the number of Xbox Ones that were sold through. So it is a real addressable market.
That's a great stat.
Yeah.
Other than your own products, do you have any favorites that you probably don't have any time, but if you could pick some favorites, what would you pick?
Gorilla Tag and Rec Room.
They're going to pay you afterward.
We'll discuss that later.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the same thing, right? I loved Rec Room and Walkabout. The magic for me is it just does not go away, and I'm still building my Lost Ball collection. I love it.
Me too. Don't worry.
I do have a single player streak in me, though. I mean, as you can tell from some of the other games on my in my history. So I love Moss so much. Polyarch's Moss.
So beautiful.
So
Just
much.
Beautiful.
And also The Last Clockwinder, if you haven't played it. I played every inch of that game. It's wonderful. So.
I'd agree for the serious answer. I'd agree with I'm big into exploration games and stuff, and my first PC game was Myst. So I know we have a great relationship with Cyan, so that's more like fanboy in me. But so games like Myst in VR, great. Riven's coming out soon, which that's my jam. That's what I'm looking forward to.
I'm going to cheat twice here, which is I do these are phenomenal games.
You play cards, is that what you're going to say?
To derive a lot of inspiration from, but my other somewhat non-answer is on Rec Room. Lots of folks are building their own games, their own experiences, and there's such interesting, complex, weird stuff out there that it's just super compelling. I'll give you one example. One of the things that actually climbed up the charts in Rec Room. Somebody made effectively a Rec Room version of Omegle. And they virtualized it with this environment. You walk in, there's a PC you sit down in front of a PC and you connect to another stranger on the other end. It's like so weird and meta and like really delightful.
So creative.
Truly,
Yeah.
truly cool. And so seeing those types of things, come every day, just fresh ideas you would have never imagined, it's super exciting and compelling.
I see the wonderful Cluj Entertainment team here with their synth riders, which is a very, very popular experience. I'd like to say that I've lost a lot of weight playing it, but I haven't yet. and one of the first and top games on the Apple Vision Pro. That was really great to launch there. A neat experience. I am going to turn it to questions. I was going to go into toxicity, but I think that's just a really big black hole. That we're having a really great moment. Everybody's happy today. So I think we should just stick with that. And we can open it up to questions. Over here. Oh.
Thanks very much for coming to speak with us today. I thought that you raised some excellent questions, and I just wanted to ask all of you, what is your opinion, for example, when one of you said, how do we bring existing communities into VR? Because accessibility, as you've all stated, is huge, and 1 million people is massive, but how many more people would love to be involved if they had access? So do you have any thoughts on that? Sort of what are maybe baby steps and then longer term, what could we do?
Yeah, you quoted me, so I guess I'll start. So, we care a lot about making a game that's for everybody. Because everybody deserves to be part of the community. What my thoughts are is that we care a lot, and we're trying, and we'll continue to work on it. But there's a long way to go to make everybody feel safe, physically and emotionally, and included. And it's definitely a commitment we have that we will keep investing in over time. But in terms of how, we're going to keep trying.
We keep inviting.
Yeah. We have some. We all have some features in that direction, and it could always be more.
Yeah. That's something that we are always trying to do as well. And again, we're a small team, so it's something that we really rely on playing with our community and talking to our community. On launch day a lot, we do Twitch streams, and one of the great streamers, his name is Crazy Legs Jan, and he's wheelchair bound. And it's really great playing with him and talking with him, because we try to make things that, especially like lost ball finding and stuff like that, that it's something that is comfortable to find from a seated position. So that's one thing that we learned about early on, and we try to implement, and we're not perfect at it either. There are sometimes he's like, yeah, I had to fly up to get that. But that's another reason why we include stuff like being able to fly around and just different ways to try to think about that. But as you said, I'm just going to echo you on that. It's something we're continuously trying to, and we do have some ideas in play too for how we want to keep expanding that accessibility. But yeah, it's an ongoing challenge for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard to tell which came first at Rec Room. The employee base is incredibly diverse. Our community is incredibly diverse. And I think the fact that those are somewhat mirror images help because designing for everyone is really baked into everything that we're doing all the time. And it's not perfect, but we certainly will continue to strive to get there. It is a core ideal of the company that everyone can play and everyone can create. And so we'll continue to try to live up to those ideals.
The moments where we are successful at reaching a new group of people, or even just an individual, are so rewarding. At least, because I come at it from a design perspective, so I'm focused on the player's experience. And the head of programming for AWE, Sonia Haska, played
Right
Echo
in the back
VR.
of the room, our superstar back there.
Played Echo VR competitively, seated, because there was a period of time where she had mobility issues. And it was really inspiring to us as a team to know that we gave someone with some mobility issues the freedom in zero gravity to be a competitive player. So as long as those stories keep happening, we're going to keep investing.
I think you had a question too.
Hi. Hello? Can you, okay. I think I joined Rec Room like 6 years ago, almost. You know, and I am a grumpy old man, and I stopped because I don't want to interact with 11-year-old boys. And is there a way to do something? Is there some method? Because I haven't even got back into it, even though I really enjoyed it. Because I did enjoy interacting with a lot of the people. But if I'm going social, I had kids for 20 years and I'm done with them.
Fair. And look, as the platform has expanded beyond VR, it's attracted younger players who are using mobile devices. Yeah, at the end of the day, like generally people want to play with other people like themselves. And so we've actually been putting a lot of work into our matchmaking algorithms, understanding where you're spending time, who you're spending time with, and making sure that we're kind of proactively pairing you with folks in that same cohort. So it is getting better. I think there's more intelligence behind the scenes, and it's getting better all the time.
Other questions? All the way over here. Please do think of questions. This is your chance to talk to these three superstars.
Hey everybody, thank you for doing this talk. It's super interesting. As you've all had great success building a community in VR, can you talk a little bit about challenges, best practices, obstacles in then bringing that community to other devices, whether it's mobile, basically flat screen?
Yeah, I can kick it off. I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. VR is honestly kind of a cheat code when it comes to engagement. It's just amazing to exist in that space and pick up objects and throw them and interact with people. And you lose a lot of that when you move to a console or a mobile device. And so we're really working hard to give people that sense of control and expression. And to your point, how do you imbue the avatar with a sense of personality and uniqueness and individuality, even when you don't have full control over your limbs or you don't have eye tracking or finger tracking? It's a really difficult design problem, honestly. We've made some good strides. Even on our mobile device, you have these kind of alternate thumbsticks that you can use to wave your arms around. And it's not perfect, but it's like it gives you some form of expression that frankly you don't have on similar games. So I can say we're working really hard at it. I don't think anybody's cracked this code, but I'm excited. I think these are the types of minds that'll get us there eventually.
Well, we are focused on. We are focused on in Gorilla Tag, and then our other projects, which is in closed early access. We're focused on building VR communities, VR third spaces. But I'm interested in how, if you go back in time, how AltSpace VR solved that problem, because they were multi-platform. Yeah, so
Cool.
So it was interesting how they brought together, and you could tell, oh, that person must be on a Vive, that person must be on a Gear VR, et cetera. And then that continued with the work of at Mozilla on Mozilla Hubs, where they were bringing flat screen web players into the same virtual space as a VR game. So that's interesting. At the moment, though, because one of the axioms of another axiom is hand-based movement, and or at least physical movement that feels native to VR. That isn't a focus for us at the moment. It's not one of our axioms at the moment.
Yeah, short answer here is that it's very challenging, because you want to match whatever experience is here to whatever is in here, and that's nigh impossible, because that is, you got full 360 vision, not 360 vision, but you know what I'm saying. You got 3D virtual environments versus your flat screen phone. it's challenging, but I know our methodology is just like, it's until we get an experience that feels just as surprising and enjoyable as it can be, that matches as closely as it can to the VR experience, that's when we'll know it's ready. Yeah.
Another question.
Oh yeah, thanks. Also, wonderful, engaging games, and for social VR, would you guys care to comment, for better or for worse, about the communities? What was learned with what happened at Altspace VR?
Yeah, you're referring to they added the personal space bubble with the, yeah. I mean, we had that in Echo VR in the lobbies. But because Echo and Tag are like full contact sports, you can't have a personal space bubble if you need to tag the person or you need to, steal the disc from them. So what was learned was that when possible, right, you want to mediate the experience so that everybody is like physically and emotionally safe. But any game is this, designers talk about this magic circle where you step in and you say, I'm gonna, accept these rules for now, or I'm gonna say I'm not playing. So if you're gonna play tag, you're gonna be touched. Sorry, I didn't ask.
Do that harder.
So I think that the more real that we can make these places, and the more real we can make these other people, the more thousands of years, millions of years of human evolution will take over, so that the social expectations will be close to the real world. And one of the things that humans need is the stick as well as the carrot. And so, you didn't want to get into this because there's not time.
In
but
fact,
our
there's
sticks
7 seconds left.
Yeah, our sticks need to evolve too. So.
Yeah, I've had a lot of experience with the stick side of it. Truly, it doesn't scale. At the end of the day, a lot of responsibility needs to be put on the players themselves, on the people who are moderating these spaces, because the reality is when something bad has happened and you call in the authorities, it's like the damage has been done and that's awful. And so you have to kind of root cause it and try to get to the heart of why somebody would be acting poorly to begin with, and try to eliminate that behavior. And you'll never totally ferret it out, especially in a virtual environment where you have the protection of anonymity. But you can, again, strive to have the community, self-police, and reinforce the values of kind of positivity and collaborative kind of spirit.
So we want to end on a happier note, but we're at time, and I want to say that I have thoroughly enjoyed the beautiful, combo of your conversations with each other, bouncing things off each other, agreeing with each other. And so, unlike in VR, you have a real-world relationship, hopefully starting here, which I think is really cool. And I appreciate everyone attending.
Thanks. Yeah, that was really fun.